it begins. Right here. Where's my seat? Here it is. It's told that with this thing, you get free popcorn. I'm a stuck member, so I can get a refill. Too bad it's only the regular. Make this a freaking movie already. Get the game and pay more afterwards. Isn't that great? It's starting. Oh shit! Oh shit! Already? Woohoo! Woo! Now on to the next one. Any minute now, the next one should start. Couldn't get a regular, so I bought a big one. Yeah! Woo! Finally! Yeah! I love the shit out of this. No movie is perfect, but Star Wars: The Last Jedi does not deserve this amount of hate. This is a special review, because it's my first review, sort of, and the Star Wars films have a lot of sentimental value to me, including the new films. I really love this movie.
Pop supplies!
Yeah, alright. I'm not saying this movie is a 10 out of 10. I'd give it something between an 8 and a 9. I of course had my problems with this film, like Phasma's screen time, Maz's underutilization, Holdo's poor leadership skills, even though she gave us Lando not showing up or any mention of him, so hopefully in 9 we'll see him again. And the fact that the opening crawl didn't give us and instead we got. But aside from that, I believe this was a well-made, beautiful-looking, and entertaining film, and it was more original than Force Awakens. It felt new, and I loved the fact that this film took risks rather than just play it safe. The Last Jedi received critical praise, but not as much from the audience. Mostly the fans who hated the last one, and wanted certain things to happen in this film in order to make it better than The Force Awakens. And all I heard were the same damn comments they gave the last film.
Rita Mary Sue, this movie's just feminist propaganda. This movie's just a rehash. Kylo Ren is a punk bitch. Disney ruined Star Wars.
As well as new comments like,
Luke was completely out of character. Rose is pointless and she sucks. We didn't come here for a PETA commercial. Why the fuck did they kill Snoke? There's more to him than what the fuck they gave us. What's Mary Poppins doing in this movie?
the fans who hated this movie do not know what the fuck they want anymore, and hold the new films to such a high standard that they CinemaSins the shit out of it in order to justify their disappointment and hate for it. And today I'm going to defend this movie with the exact same passion as the haters. Before I defend this film, I might as well talk about the previous film. After the original trilogy, which I enjoyed very much and still do, and the prequels, which I still have major issues with, I was waiting for Lucasfilm to surprise and excite me with the 7th installment. And they did! I really loved The Force Awakens. It was exciting, the action was great, the cinematography and effects were just beautiful. The character development and performances were amazing, way better than the prequels by a long shot. And even though the story was structurally based on A New Hope with a dash of Empire and Jedi, I enjoyed the execution. All those 10 years of waiting really paid off. This movie recaptured my childhood with its homages and nostalgic moments, and the new stuff in it was very welcome. I found Rey and Finn to be enjoyable and very interesting characters. Finn is a stormtrooper who defects the First Order, and is the first one to do so. And Rey is a scavenger who gains a new purpose when the Force awakens within her. I enjoyed Han Solo's return, as well as Leia's return, and Luke's. Even though he was there for a few seconds, the kid in me was screaming with excitement, especially during that intense Falcon chase, which really projected how fast that baby was. I found Kylo Ren very compelling in that film as well. He's not another Darth Vader, but he wants to be. And that works in favor of his character because he's a flawed and conflicted villain, which is far more interesting than having another villain who's evil for the sake of being evil. I love the score as well. Themes like Rey's theme, Kylo Ren's theme, as well as the theme that plays at the end, will always stick in my head. John Williams never ceases to amaze. Ever since I heard J.J. Abrams was slated to direct The Force Awakens, I knew it was in good hands because he's made pretty good films in the past. Now, as then, I really think the hate for Force Awakens is just dumb. But the hate for The Last Jedi is even dumber. Now let's get to it. All the hate comments on Rey since The Force Awakens haven't changed a bit.
Rey's a Mary Sue! Fuck this feminist propaganda shit! How's she doing that without training?
Well, on Jakku, she's pretty much been on the planet since she was 5, surviving and fighting her whole life. She probably trained with the staff to defend herself. The only reason Kylo lost to Rey was because he was shot by Chewie and injured, and after killing his father, was split inside, and he hadn't fully completed his training either. And also because the Force was guiding her, like Maz said earlier in The Force Awakens.
The light. It's always been there. It will guide you.
The Force helped her resist Kylo Ren's mind reading, it helped her escape captivity on Starkiller Base, and it helped her defeat Kylo. In A New Hope, it was established that the Force can control your actions, as well as follow the user. Now in this film, we see her training with the staff, then training with the lightsaber, and doing so with such grace, and then with ferocity. After seeing that, I knew she was ready. Even Luke was watching how skilled she was with the weapon.
Just because Rey can fight with the staff doesn't mean she can use a lightsaber!
Shut up! There are plenty of martial artists out there who would agree that using a staff versus using a sword, in this case a lightsaber, isn't all that different in terms of combat. If you remember, Luke Skywalker had little to no lightsaber combat training either. Hell, he only learned how to use the Force to help him block blaster fire. And he even blew up the Death Star on his own, using the Force. Sure, he may have had help from Han, and Obi-Wan may have told him, "Use the Force, Luke." But he did it. He blew it up. In Empire, he figured out how to use the Force to pull his lightsaber toward him. On his own. In his duel against Vader. He was handling himself pretty well. Granted, Vader was being coy with Luke. Later on, Vader fights him more aggressively, and Luke was still doing a pretty good job with the saber. Until he lost a hand. Luke was also on his own because he abandoned his training with Yoda.
If you choose to face Vader, you will do it alone. I cannot interfere.
In Return of the Jedi, he learned how to use the Force on his own. Using mind control, Force choking guards, doing flips and shit. He also constructs his new lightsaber. Luke even returns to Yoda to complete the training, but Yoda says he has everything he needs. And unfortunately, Yoda dies. And years later, Luke would begin a training temple. As far as lightsaber training goes, it wouldn't be top tier prequel lightsaber training because he never received it. Therefore, Kylo Ren only knew the basics of lightsaber combat. Combat that would be evenly matched by a chick who's good with the staff and therefore a lightsaber. And with assistance from the Force. And during their fight with the guards in The Last Jedi, she stood somewhat of a chance against them because number one, she of course had help, and number two, the guards aren't Force sensitive. She was also struggling against the last guard she fought. Everyone was also complaining that Luke didn't teach her shit. Yes he did. As the first of 3 lessons, he taught her what the Force actually was and how to tap into it herself. And that's pretty much all she needed to know how to use it on her own. More than once afterward, we see her using the Force to pull the lightsaber toward her. And by the end of the film, she's lifting rocks on her own. Case closed.
And how the hell does she know how to fly the Millennium Falcon?
Well, if you were paying attention...
How did you do that?
I don't know. I've flown some ships, but I've never left the planet.
There you go. All the haters say she's OP as hell, but believe it or not, she shares the same characteristics as another iconic character. Darth Bane. Think about it. Both their parents are nobodies, spent most of their lives surviving in a hostile environment, and they both know how to use Force powers and perform impossible feats without any prior training. With Darth Bane, I guess it's cool, but since Rey is a chick, she's a Mary Sue? How the fuck does that work? Oh yeah, and there's a new complaint that fans have about her now. We don't get to find out who Rey's parents are. So, as soon as she went to the dark cave, I knew she wasn't gonna find any answers. Having parents that didn't give a shit about her is pretty much an answer she didn't want to hear, or a truth she didn't want to accept. Even Kylo Ren rubbed it in her face to fill her with hatred and despair in order for her to turn. I feel it's better that, at least for now, Rey came from nothing, but achieved a purpose by becoming a Jedi, than for her to have an obvious lineage in order to justify how powerful she is. There's a saying, some heroes were born great, others have greatness dropped upon them. Let's talk about the Force. This ability has been expanded and made things more interesting. From lifting rocks to being able to project yourself from a faraway distance and troll people into thinking you're actually there. I really enjoyed the way the Force was used in the film. Especially the Force Mind Bridge with Kylo and Rey. It helps the two connect in a way you'd never expect a hero and villain to before. Rey constantly throws angry insults at him, but as they continue to speak to each other, she starts to understand him more. Rey at one point asks Kylo why he killed his own father, and he says, "Let the past die. Kill it if you have to. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be." One of my favorite scenes of the film was the Lesson 1 scene, where Luke teaches her that the Force does not belong to the Jedi, pretty much proving that the power of the Force doesn't have to be hereditary. We clearly see that at the end, with the boy Rose and Finn met on Canto Bight. The way she taps into the Force to see the island from a different perspective was very graceful. And then intensity ensues when she gets drawn to the dark place, frightening even Luke, bringing back some demons. Or Siths? I don't know. A lot of people had a problem with Leia's use of the Force in the film as well. As TIE fighters blow up the bridge on the Resistance cruiser, she gets sucked out into space. But with the Force, she pulls herself towards the cruiser, saving herself. I'll admit, at first it looked weird to me, but in all my viewings afterwards, I was content with it. She wasn't fucking flying, alright? And plus, this is the only time we're ever going to see her use the Force to this extent. Let that sink in. Another thing people hated about the movie is that they killed off Supreme Leader Snoke, after only being introduced in Force Awakens and having only 2 to 3 scenes in both films. He was introduced as a mysterious figure in the first film. Every one of us wondered who he was and where he came from. But in the throne room scene in The Last Jedi, Kylo cuts Snoke in half, and that's the end of it. Bummer. People on and off YouTube had so many theories about his origin. He's Palpatine reincarnated. He's Darth Plagueis the Wise. He's Darth Vader. And now they're pissed off because it wasn't really what they wanted, and we don't know shit about him. I, however, am fine with this scene. Why? Because it helps Kylo Ren's character progression. He goes from a conflicted, unbalanced apprentice to his own master. Without Snoke or Hux to hold him down, he can take control as the new Supreme Leader. I'm interested to see where it all goes from there. I cared more about Kylo Ren more than I did for Snoke, to be honest. Because he felt more like a background villain than anything. An anchor for the real villain. And now the anchor is released. Thanks, Ryan! It's also revealed that Snoke was the one who bridged Kylo and Rey's minds together, in order to draw her in.
How does he know how to bridge Rey's mind with Kylo's if he never knew her?
I'm guessing he's that powerful. And that's all you need to know. And if Luke hadn't closed himself off from the Force, Snoke would have definitely found him by now. When people saw Empire and Jedi, I'm pretty sure they wanted to know more about Palpatine. And we got those answers in the prequels. It, however, did make Palpatine a bit more interesting, because we found out that he orchestrated the demise of the Jedi Order. But I really don't think Snoke was all that interesting enough to make a prequel about, just because we don't know shit about him. I just figured he's connected with Palpatine, and was just his go-to guy in the event that he dies, which he does. All the haters blame Rian Johnson for ruining Snoke. It's not the filmmaker's fault that Snoke's character was ruined. It's your fault. Yeah, you're the ones that implanted the idea in your head that Snoke is a very big deal. Ooh, he's scary and mysterious and Kylo Ren's boss. I hope he's so-and-so. And even though I didn't think Snoke was that interesting of a character, I did enjoy his screen time. Andy Serkis's performance as Snoke was just phenomenal. And as a result, Snoke came off as sinister, dark, and intimidating, even if he didn't turn out to be the big baddie. And the absence of the explanation of who Snoke is and where he's from makes him even more mysterious. Like Yoda. Why don't we see any more of his kind? Because that makes Yoda more mysterious. Sure, they use the element from Return of the Jedi in order to out him, but come on, let's be real. If he was kept alive until Episode 9, the haters would ultimately say,
This movie's a ripoff of Return of the Jedi!
You know, let's talk about them for a second. If you dislike a movie I liked, that's fine. I'm not gonna hate on you just because you like Transformers, Justice League, or 50 Shades of Fucked Up. But I think people who dislike the film are being unfair to it. And a vast majority of them are fans. All they do is go into these movies with the mindset that the film is gonna be shit. I'm sorry, but if that's your mindset, then you can't call yourself a fan. Fans are supposed to enjoy the movies they're into, or at least have optimism that it's going to be good. Not shit on a line of movies that haven't even come out yet just because you saw a movie in that same franchise that wasn't to your liking. I may hate Batman vs Superman, but at least I had hope that Suicide Squad would be good, and it fucking wasn't. And even then, I try to stay positive for upcoming movies in the franchise, whether or not they end up being good, or just being a rushed product. When I saw The Force Awakens, I thought it was pretty damn good. And then the trailer for Rogue One came out. I was a bit more curious than I was excited, and once I saw it, I loved it. And I was excited for The Last Jedi because I knew it was in good hands. And I have to admit, after seeing the Solo trailer, I have my doubts, but at least I remain optimistic. I don't understand why fans can't be optimistic rather than have a ridiculous pre-made opinion. Another thing that really frustrates me. Before the movie came out, so many of the fans came out with so many theories, like who Snoke is, who are Rey's parents, that she'll turn to the dark side and Ben Solo to the light, Luke will turn evil, Finn will be force sensitive and meet his father Mace Windu. And now that none of these things happen, the theories are destroyed. And they hate the movie because what actually happens in the film doesn't meet their standard. Don't you guys want to be surprised anymore? Sure, there are some predictable moments in the film, but there are a few surprises. Like Kylo and Rey teaming up in the most epic lightsaber action sequence ever, or the Lightspeed Kamikaze, or Luke trolling Kylo by projecting himself, or Poe drifting in a fucking X-Wing? That was fucking awesome. I was even surprised by the size of the bombers in the beginning action sequence. Sure, they were faulty as fuck, but it was only meant to create tension. And it's quite understandable that the Resistance had a limited amount of resources as opposed to the First Order. Yoda showing up was also a surprise. And we hope for that to happen. And can I just address how happy I was with the fact that Yoda was in CG and was the right version of Yoda in this film? Thanks, Ryan! Movies are meant to be exciting and unexpected. The unexpected makes the film more interesting. And when people are too speculative on what they'll think will happen, what actually happens will piss them off.
Star Wars divisiveness has switched over this morning to the Han Solo movie because the trailer came out this morning.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
You know, this is the only franchise where you go on Twitter and they say, if such and such happens, I am so out.
Yes.
So now they're speculating about things they don't want to see. It surprises me, but look, you can't please everybody.
Fan theories pretty much ruined Star Wars films for them. That's why Chris Stuckman gave this movie an A-, because he stayed away from spoilers and fan theories, as well as avoiding coming up with theories himself, and therefore enjoyed the film greatly. A buddy who sat next to me in the theater during my first viewing was exactly the same. She avoided looking at any form of a synopsis prior to seeing the film, in order to experience it the old-fashioned way. and she enjoyed it. This is also why Angry Joe didn't enjoy it all that much, because in his Force Awakens spoiler review he provided a shit ton of fan theories that didn't come to pass in the actual film. It's better to enjoy what actually happens rather than focus on what could happen. People, even after seeing the film, wishes certain things were way different. Like certain action sequences.
I wish Luke and Kylo actually fought with lightsabers. I wish Rey, Luke, Kylo, and Snoke all fought in a lightsaber battle. I wish Finn fought Phasma for 2 more hours.
That's not what Star Wars is about. That's what the prequels were. Horribly rendered CG borefests that depend on over-the-top, elongated lightsaber sequences just to grab your attention and make it more interesting. Sure, they look cool as all hell, but that doesn't ultimately make the movie great. That's why movies like Transformers and Justice League fail, because they substitute what could be a good story with eye-gouging action and rushed CG shoved down your throat. But apparently that's what everyone wants to see nowadays. The prequels pretty much spoiled some of them. So when they're used to seeing a lightsaber sequence like this, and then see this, it feels like a downgrade to them, and it's ultimately a lame scene. The fights in the old trilogy and the new films were way more realistic, and the new films finally got the lighting from the fucking lightsabers right. Why is no one admiring this? Why? Why? Star Wars' strong point was always its narrative, its storytelling, lessons on good and evil, how one can learn from their failures, how saving lives is more important than risking lives. Even character development. As I discussed before, Kylo Ren is a great example of this. Going from a conflicted apprentice to his own master was the best thing that could have happened to his character. The main thing a film needs to be great is to have a good story, not just certain things that need to happen or contain super cool action sequences in order to make the movie better. It still makes me cringe how people actually think the prequels are better than the new films. Really? The movies that really ruined Star Wars are better than the ones that are keeping its spirit going. That's a really big slap to the face to all the people who worked really hard to make the new films as amazing as the originals. And I do find it funny how a lot of people are calling this film feminist propaganda when the new chicks they introduce or bring back from the first film are killed off ultimately. Paige Tico, gone. Tali Lintra, gone. Admiral Holdo, gone. Captain Phasma, the only female villain in any Star Wars film other than Zam, gone. A lot of chicks die in this movie. Doesn't sound like feminist propaganda to me. And the only main chicks who survive in this movie are Rey, Leia, and the new character, Rose. Speaking of who, I have seen The Last Jedi about 11 times in theaters, and each time I've seen it, I couldn't find any reason to hate on this one character. Rose Tico. The one who they all say is the new Jar Jar Binks. Dumb, annoying, useless, and pointless. And to those people I say, did you not pay fucking attention at all? She's definitely there for a reason. Not to drive the story forward necessarily, but to help another character's arc. Finn's.
Character development for Finn? I didn't see that shit.
Well, as Rose says in the movie,
we're closer.
Before these two meet, Finn wants to meet up with Rey before she returns so he can save her from the First Order. The same intentions he had in The Force Awakens.
How do you know how to disable the shields? I don't. I'm just here to get Rey.
But when Rose catches him trying to board an escape pod, his plans are foiled. Then as they talk to each other, they come up with a plan to save the Resistance without any casualties by sneaking on board Snoke's ship, cutting the power breaker off, and shutting the hyperspace tracker down. So their adventure begins as they both head to a casino on Canto Bight to find the Master Codebreaker so they can complete the mission. Ah yes, Canto Bight. I love Canto Bight a lot, unlike most people. And even though it does take you out of the movie just a bit, seeing a casino in a Star Wars movie was pretty refreshing. Just as it was refreshing to see a club with a guy who wants to sell death sticks. Glad it wasn't a fucking cantina again. Sure, the mission turns out to be for nothing later on, but the whole movie's theme was about failure. It was also meant to raise stakes, and they were high as fuck. So when Rose tells Finn to take a look behind the beauty of the casino, He finds out it's not a beautiful place after all. He then feels that something needs to be done about the corruption in the galaxy. Her bringing Finn on this journey helps his character progression because he gains a further insight of the universe he never got to explore as a stormtrooper, and also helps Finn gain a new purpose. He sees that the First Order's shadow is spreading across the galaxy and feels an obligation to do something about it. Without Rose, Finn would have fled the Resistance and be a lost cause. From their first meeting till the end, Finn goes from a man who wants to run to a man who's willing to give his own life for the greater good. Oh, don't worry, we'll get to that scene in a bit. And I enjoyed all of Rose's scenes. She's cool, she's determined, she's a kind and gentle soul. And we clearly see that on Canto Bight as she's freeing the Fathiers. A sequence that I really enjoyed. Not to mention her chemistry with Finn clicks almost as well as Finn and Rey.
So we don't have to trust him, we just have to believe he'll do what he says he'll do.
Okay, yeah, that's literally the definition of the word trust.
Let's not forget to mention that she doesn't seem in any way similar to any character in the Star Wars universe. She's a new character. She's no Leia or Padme or even Rey. She's just Rose. We also get a little backstory for Rose about how the First Order invaded her mining home planet and took everything away from her and her sister when they were children. That was pretty interesting. There's also this one scene of hers which I thought was well done. DJ, not the Master Codebreaker, but a Codebreaker they picked up on Canto Bight, says he'll help Finn and Rose with the mission if she gives him her medallion, which was the same as her sister's. She's hesitant at first, but realizing the importance of the mission, she eventually hands him the medallion. She could have let her emotions get to her, but she didn't. Otherwise, if she went all,
Medallion, but it means a lot to me. No, you can't have this.
I probably would have been annoyed with her ass. But I think a lot of people hated her more during the crate scene, when she saved Finn from ramming into the battering ram cannon and sacrificing himself. Finn goes to Rose asking why she stopped, and then Rose says,
I saved you. Tell me. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
She kisses him as the cannon blasts the door open and passes out. Sure, the line was a bit cheesy, but the scene makes a lot more sense than people think. If Rose hadn't saved Finn, his sacrifice, though done with the right intentions, would have been for nothing. Because at the speed he was going, there was no fucking way he was going to do enough damage to destroy the cannon. Especially in that hunk of shit. He was going at the speed of a car in a freeway. And as he was headed towards it, the heat waves coming from the cannon were causing the speeder to burn up. So he probably would have blown up by the time he got to the core.
Why didn't he just go in a diagonal angle instead of traveling through the heat wave?
It still wouldn't have worked. Look how much damage is done to those speeders when they crash into each other. So I'm glad that Rose saved Finn from killing himself in a way that would end up being pointless. And it's enough to know that he was willing to sacrifice himself for the Resistance rather than have him killed off doing it. And thanks to Rose bringing him along for that whole journey, he now gained that mindset. Plus, if Finn had died, he wouldn't have reunited with Rey. So, thanks, Rose! And as for Rose's little quote, there's more to the quote than you think. People who say, that's not how war works, need to remember the fact that she is not a soldier. She was just a maintenance woman. She's never seen war or fought in one. Only her sister has. So of course she doesn't know how war works. As far as saving Finn is concerned, Rose just lost her one and only sister, and then she met Finn, who by the way was the only hero she ever met. And during their mission, she's grown to care for Finn. So when it came to him about to sacrifice himself, she wasn't ready to lose another person she grew to love. So once again, I'm glad she saved Finn, because I wasn't ready for him to die either. And it makes sense that she would say, we can win, not fighting what we hate, saving what we love, because she wasn't exposed to war like her sister was. It was also just a clever way of saying, I love you. It's way more believable
I truly, deeply love you
than that. And as far as I'm concerned, even if Finn doesn't love Rose the way she loves him yet, I'd buy Finn and Rose's romance any day over.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Oh my fucking god.
But But that line was so cringy, man! It made my ears bleed! You wanna hear a cringy line? Then watch this clip from the Emoji Movie.
Oh, Gene. You really are a meh.
What happened to looking out for number one?
Being number one doesn't matter if there aren't any other numbers.
If there is any character in any movie that is a physical representation of all the things people hate about Rose, it's Isabella from Transformers: The Last Knight. I'm not even fucking joking. She was only put in that movie to push some feminist agenda. There's a whole trailer that amplifies this.
Fight like a girl? Yeah, I fight like a girl. Don't you?
In the film, she's barely in it, has no reason to be there, a bit annoying, and they push girl power in your face by having her do some super cool shit. Rose is a way better character than she is. She's in the film for a good amount of time despite not being in any of the main trailers, actually has a reason to be there, and they don't shove feminism down your throat. It's funny how the actress who played Isabella is named Isabella. Lazy fuck. Speaking of actresses, Kelly Marie Tran.
It looks so cool! They did such a good job! Oh my god!
Now, all of you people need to cut her some slack. If you hate the character, whatever. But does your opinion make it worth it to threaten or make racist and sexist comments online about her? It really doesn't. This was her first major project, and you're just shitting all over her. I'm sure she doesn't mind opinions now, but how do you think she felt when she first heard comments like,
Rose was the worst character in the film and I wish he died at the end.
Or,
this Asian bitch ruined the movie for me. And I'm not just talking about the terrible character she played.
Must have heard a lot. The way I see it, she was given the role of a lifetime, and she pulled a great performance, and all you haters out there were too ignorant to realize how pivotal a character Rose actually was in the film. And I'm sure if any of you were lucky enough to get a supporting role in a fucking Star Wars movie and got this reaction, you'd feel like shit too. Here's the subject I saved for last. Luke Skywalker, the focal point of the movie. The character who was ridiculed for being out of character. He was out of character for a reason, because his horrible mistake made him feel the ultimate guilt, and it changed him. Luke gave up on everything he believed in and became a hermit. He was broken. Once Rey arrived on the island and told Luke that Han was killed by Kylo, it made Luke feel even more shitty because his mistake caused the death of his best friend. Luke definitely didn't want to go back now because he might have caused deaths of more people, like his sister. And then we see Luke go through his daily routine, which I found pretty interesting. I know what you're thinking about immediately as I mention that. After R2 gives Luke a little motivation, he eventually agrees to teach Rey the ways of the Force and why the Jedi need to end. 3 lessons. One of which is a deleted scene. Let's not forget that Luke didn't have the same views as the Jedi Order did back in the Republic era. He only knew about their history. The second lesson he teaches Rey was pretty much pointing out that the Jedi pretty much suck because they constantly fail. He isn't wrong. All the Jedi failed to sense that their own Chancellor was a Sith Lord, allowing him to rise to power and kill them all. Yoda failed to kill Palpatine, Obi-Wan failed as a master, and so does Luke, letting his fear of Ben's descent into darkness get the better of him.
Luke would never kill his own family members, that's so out of character!
Well, if you see in Return of the Jedi, you see Luke about to kill his own father in anger, until Palpatine's dumbass tells him to get on with it. Luke then realizes what he's doing and stops. What Luke saw in Ben was probably horrifying enough to give him a paranoid notion to kill his nephew in order to break the cycle. He also stops, realizing what he's doing. But before Luke can put away the lightsaber, Ben turns on him, then escapes shortly after burning down his Jedi temple, murdering half his students and taking away the others. After shortly opening himself to the Force again, Yoda shows up telling him it's time to give up this mindset, teaching him that failure is the greatest teacher.
Why didn't Yoda show up before?
If Luke hadn't closed himself off from the Force, Yoda would have a long time ago. So after the guidance from his old master, Luke shows up to face Kylo Ren and give the Resistance time to escape. I'd like to talk about the considerable amount of hate for the way The Last Jedi handled Luke's death. The haters were all saying it was uneventful and too soon. I, on the other hand, felt that Luke's death in this film was very effective. I enjoyed the sequence a lot, because he's a hero again, and he brought a spark of hope to the fight. And he died because, if you were paying attention, Kylo mentioned to Rey that it could kill you. This is the first time since Luke closed himself off from the Force that he's used it to this extent. I feel that his death in this film was more effective than having him just being struck down with the lightsaber. Plus, he trolled Kylo good! Even I was fooled during my first viewing. The reason why this even worked on Kylo was because anger is pretty much his Achilles heel. Kylo was so blinded by anger that he didn't realize that he was a projection. And I really appreciated Luke's tragic story in this movie. He goes from a powerful Jedi to a broken old man with a terrible past he can't let go of because he blames himself for it, to the legend Leia and Rey wanted him to be. The final shot of him before he becomes one with the Force is pretty heartbreaking. And it was so poetic how it mirrored the twins' sun shot in A New Hope. In this film, I truly believe the ending to Luke's story was done justice, and I definitely wouldn't have had it any other way. Also, I feel his death happening in this film as opposed to having him die in the third is a good move, because it raises stakes for Episode 9. Rey is the last Jedi now, and the only hope is stopping Kylo Ren, so this puts a lot of weight on her shoulders. Also, the Resistance is going to need reinforcements if they're going to take on what's left of the army of the First Order. This makes me more than interested and excited for what's coming. People who hated Rian Johnson's take on Luke probably have viewed him after Return of the Jedi as an all-powerful Jedi who never gives up and never makes mistakes. He's still a human, guys. Always has been. He's no immortal being. He's just very strong with the Force. No one's perfect, and neither is Luke. He has his strengths and his weaknesses, just like you and me. And when you were a kid, watching A New Hope, you probably related to him, wanting more in life than just a simple, boring lifestyle. I want you to try to correct me if I'm wrong. In conclusion, I really wanted to make this review / editorial because this movie is wrongly getting hated on, and all the pieces of shit of the year can get a pass. It's still ridiculous that people are judging 2 films in a trilogy when it's not even complete, as well as comparing spin-offs to 2 separate movies in a trilogy. That's not exactly fair. Solo isn't even out yet. Look, just wait until Episode 9 comes out, and then judge the trilogy as a whole, alright? And the fact that there was a petition signed by tons of fans to remove this film from canon disgusts me. Not just because of how immature it is, but the fact that this is Carrie Fisher's last performance as Leia, and all you haters out there want it destroyed. I want you to think about that for a second. And as for the new line of Star Wars films coming out, I'm just glad that they're completely separate from the Skywalker saga, so all the babies can stop bitching about Disney fucking up their childhood! Coming out every year with a Star Wars film is a bit overkill, sure, but as long as the films are good, I'm fine with it. I'm honestly kind of excited to see different Star Wars movies from different creators, giving us new perspectives into the universe. I mean, Game of Thrones creators making Star Wars films? How fucking cool is that? I'm gonna miss the original storyline though. It was memorable, full of wonder, and was epic in so many ways. And regardless of what I thought of the prequels, I felt there were memorable moments there too. The sequel films have brought all the best things about Star Wars back, and until Episode 9 comes out, I have hope that it will give the Skywalker saga the ending it truly deserves.